I guess it's now my great pleasure to invite Phil Dyson to the dais. Phil's going to give us an overview of today, so please welcome Phil. I think everyone's familiar with Phil, but if not, Phil is Project Manager for Farming Sustainable Soils at the North Central Catchment Management Authority. Thanks, Phil.
Thanks, James. Yeah, I pretty much want to pick up where we finished last night and to bring people that weren't here yesterday up to speed. So this is an overview, I guess, at the start of today to get you all thinking about really what the Farming for Sustainable Soils project is all about. And as Brad said in his introduction, basically, yeah, this is about looking after our land, it's looking after our soils, and we have recognised from the outset that in order to do that, to use somebody else's words this morning, we need to consider the intersection between people and communities, between science and between government as well. And I guess what Farming for Sustainable Soils is really about is trying to deal with the first two. If we're going to do anything about protecting the land and preserving it for the future, and Di Mullins made the point yesterday, quoting the FAO, saying if we keep going the way we are, I've only got about 60 years of topsoil left in the world, at the same time as our populations is going through the roof. So, you know, we do have to do something. But I guess the thing that's fundamental to Farming for Sustainable Soils, it's about getting the people that actually farm the land involved in the management of the land. But it's much more than that. It's giving those people a responsibility for managing the land and finding answers in their own place. So, you know, up here we have, again, the Timor West group all sitting around a table, making decisions and discussing where they're going. I suspect this was an early photograph because they're all sitting far too far back from Diane at the table here, which means pretty much we haven't yet got to the point where we're necessarily totally comfortable with talking with one another, basically about where we're going. But we're certainly well beyond that point now. So it is very much about farmers working out for themselves, farming communities working out for themselves how they're going to fix the land, basically. And, you know, we've got a photo of Chris Lead in deep thought at Pyramid Hill, walking down the stubble, and, you know, he's just one of the people that contribute a lot to sorting out what we might do, what we might try, where we might go. The program has a number of components to it, and I guess these have evolved over time. The first one, I guess, well, the first one in my mind, because I'm a geologist, is basically sorting out the context. So what type of land are we actually working in? What are the inherent properties of that land? And then how do we use that information basically to deal with it? So we haven't even got to the stage where we're considering a soil. We're actually trying to work out what geomorphic context, if you like, that we're actually working within. Are we in the riverine plains where, you know, we've got soils that are sodic and dispersive, that have got maybe high salt levels at 1/2 metre down, that have got nodules of calcium carbonate, which means the pH is so high that plants won't go through it? Or are we at Dunluce, where we were yesterday, where we've got a bunch of silicified sand in the top 60 centimetres that turns to concrete in the summer and slush in the winter? Now, that's probably about the 5th time you've heard that statement in the last 24 hours. But as those that were at Dunluce yesterday kind of saw that. So, a big part, and here is that soil profile from Dunluce, and you can see quite clearly this is tough zone up the top, maybe 50, 60 centimetres thick, that we have to get through before we get into the good stuff that's basically underneath. And all of the erosion problems and all of the salinity problems follow from the hydrology that's created by that situation. So for many years we spent necessarily fixing up gully erosion and trying to get on top of putting vegetation back on saline land. And it seems like it's very much the last 5 to 10 years where we're going right back to the root cause of these problems and trying to find solutions, basically. So assessments are a big part of what our groups do. That's done by soil sampling across the area. It's done by physical analysis of the soils with experts. And it's all about understanding exactly what we've got. Craig Cossa yesterday on the bus mentioned a guy that had turned up to a soil pit it was being dug on his property, who was just amazed. He had a soil scientist there explaining what was going on, and he made the comment that it was the first time in 70 years he'd actually seen what was under his feet and how all of that worked. The second major component beyond assessment, there's no point in doing assessment unless you can understand what you're getting back from that assessment. So when you get all the chemical analysis back from the laboratory, when you've got all the physical analysis completed, what does the group actually do with that? Well, it just doesn't sit there on the shelf. Basically, we're on about bringing the best experts we can in the country in to actually explain what those results actually mean. And here we have Doris Blessing from RM Consulting. She comes in from Penguin on the western coast of New South Wales to work with us just about every year and to work with our groups. We make a group booking for her basically to have access to her. We also obviously use our local soils experts at the same time, but through the program having access to people that have national or international reputation for this area certainly adds to our cause. The third component, I guess, is working out exactly what you might do to become sustainable beyond what you're doing in the present time, and then looking at what the opportunities are to actually improve land management in order to improve the soil. And again, that's a matter of integrating a whole bunch of knowledge and farmers as a community making decisions about what they want to look at, and then taking that out into the paddocks and giving it a go and looking at what works and what doesn't work. So here we have a bunch of people again at Pyramid Hill that are looking at summer row crops as part of that exercise. We're also looking at pulses and a range of other opportunities to make a difference. So really, at the end of the day, over the last 9 or 10 years, basically, we've been creating a network of communities that are capable of doing it for themselves, farmers doing it for themselves, and apologies to the Eurythmics and Aretha Franklin. That's what it's all about. It's really, if we're going to make a difference, then we have to get to the stage where we have farming communities trying things, working out for themselves what works and what doesn't work, and using a knowledge base to build that. And out of all of that, well, one would hope, and with the intersection with government, that basically we as a community become policy makers, not policy takers. Thank you.
Well done.